Hello everybody, I'm Kermit the Grog, and this is Boy Bounce Book Let's Explore Shonen Jump. Now, who am I? Now, probably if you clicked on this video, you might know me from my podcast, That Time I Got Reincarnated, in the same world as an anime podcaster. But I'm now here talking to you about Shonen Jump. Now, what's my plan for today? What's the plan of this video? What am I trying to get across to you? So, what I want to do is tell you what Shonen Jump is, why is it important, why is it different than other manga magazine, what makes Shonen Jump interesting to follow as a magazine, and even I would say most importantly, what you should be reading in Shonen Jump. Now, why am I somebody that can talk about this? So like I said, I've got a manga podcast that I've been doing with my good friends Isekai Sensei Sama and Bento Baggins. That Time I Got Reincarnated, in the same world and as Anime Podcaster. We have a side series we do called Shonen Jumping the Gun, where we read the first chapter of a manga and make wide-reaching predictions and reviews on that. So I'm very much in tune with the comings and goings in Shonen Jump. And I've also just been reading manga since I was like a wee bab, like I would say more than majority of my life, so like I've been here a while. Also I'm doing this because shouts out to one of the podcasts that got me into this whole having Shonen Jump brainworms, which is a podcast called Shonen Flop, who covers manga that flopped and got canceled before they were able to end, and that's what constantly makes me interested about what's coming in the magazine and what's going to live and what's going to die. But that's for later. We don't want to think about death right now. So let's start with my first question. What is Shonen Jump? Shonen Jump is a magazine. Now, if you don't know what a magazine, kids, is, I was about to say periodical, but that's also an old term too. It's like a book. A cheap book that would be mailed to your house every month, or that you would find on newsstands, or I guess in this case every week. And this contained manga, Japanese comics, which, speaking of which, what is manga? Manga is comics. In Japan they don't call it manga, they call it comics, or komiksu if we want to be really pedantic about it. Manga is made up, as you can see on the screen right now, is made up by the characters for whimsical pictures. This fact is not important, but it lives in my head, and now it must live in yours. So now we've defined manga. This is Shonen Jump. What's shonen, if we don't know? Shonen roughly translates as boy or young boy. I think the literal translation is few years or something. Not important. The idea is that Shonen Jump is aimed at teenagers, specifically teenage boys. Now, if you're into splitting things up by gender, and I'm freaking not, Shonen has its own mirror image on the female side with shoujo, which, young girl, and this is then mirrored again in the adult realm with seinen for adult men and joseis or adult female. But also everybody just reads all sorts of different manga, so we don't really care. Now finally, while we're kind of figuring out and defining things, why jump though? Why the word jump? And it is the American English word jump. Jumpu, I would assume. Oddly hard to find out. Admittedly, there's a lot of early Shonen Jump information that's hard to find because it's not in America and it's not in English. But the one thing I could find that made sense to me, so this might be a little anecdotal, is besides just the coolness of hey, it's the, spoiler alert, 60s, English is cool. This is we came in after the war and all that. Having an English word in the title is a cool, trendy thing to do. But specifically jump because it was a hop, skip, and a jump ahead of the competition, that it was that much further ahead than everything else when it came onto the market. And speaking of which, we will go to Shonen Jump's origin stories. Oh gosh, if we're already flashing back in the beginning, does that mean we will die at the end of the end of this panel? Maybe. Now, Shonen Jump started back in the summer of 68. I know it's disappointing, not in the summer of 69. But we just kind of have to live with it. They were published by a company named Shueisha, which they are still published by to this day in Japan. Jump originally started a bi-weekly, so every 2 weeks, but it is now and has ever since been, I believe, since sometime in the 70s, or actually early 60s, or late 60s, Weekly Shonen Jump is the full proper title of it. Now, things were actually pretty similar back then to now, even if it was still finding its feet. There was the three main manga food groups. There was fantasy action, there was sports, and there was gag manga. And to this day, we still have fantasy action, sports, and gag manga. But it is kind of a little different. Things do kind of change. Still have action, fantasy, in spades. Sports are kind of cursed. We're going to get into that a little later when I get into my recommends in the current state of Jump. And gag manga is an endangered species, we'll call it. There's very few of them. I feel like they kind of stick around. It's like a... what's the word that I want? It's like a lost evolutionary thing that we still have. It's like our tailbone being a part of a tail we don't have, or something to that extent. Now, I want to give you a little bit of idea of some early Shonen Jump series that you may have heard of. Admittedly, we don't get a lot of that. A lot of them over here into English. I'll talk about that a little bit later. But the top of that stack is Kinnikuman, which is a pro wrestling manga, a fantasy pro wrestling manga. You might know it. We got the, I guess, sequel series, I would call it, Ultimate Muscle in America, on the Fox box. But Kinnikuman, very successful. I think literally later this year we're getting a proper anime version of it at time of recording, which is pretty exciting. We also have Barefoot Gen, which is a manga, somewhat memoir autobiography of surviving the nuclear bombing at Hiroshima. And afterwards, I'm aware, at least back in the day, this was used as a teaching tool in America for Japan's experience in the war, so something you might have come across. Mazinger Z, which is a big robot mecha manga, not particularly my particular tea. I don't really do big robots, but cool to have that there in the beginning. And this one, which I had only like vaguely heard of, but has run an insane amount of time. Like, as you can see from there, ran from the 70s into under a decade ago. Kochikami Tokyo Beat Cops, I guess just about cops. Don't know. Probably not really localized. And that leads me to my point about that, is a lot of these older series have kind of aged like milk. They're not worth going back to. I would recommend as well this admittedly now somewhat old English book called Manga, The World of Japanese Comics, about manga and early manga. And there's some examples in the back, and they are just not good. So it's like, why would you pay somebody to localize these things we didn't get the first time that really only historians and weirdos like me and the people that I know would want to read? So while it is interesting to look back on them as a historical piece, we don't really have the opportunity to do that here, and all things considered, I'd rather not. Now, along with our kind of three major genre food groups, something else that did kind of, they found in the early days and did still kind of stick around to now, is the themes of friendship, effort, and victory. So when we go through all the series that have been in Jump, think about those three things that they've been doing for decades. These are ideas that keep showing up in these series. If we're aiming this at young boys or just young people, that's going to be present a lot. Now, something that made Jump different, because there were many different manga publications back in the day and to this day, something that made it special at its beginning was they had specific manga awards to bring in new up-and-coming artists and talent. The main award I want to talk about is the Tezuka Award. This is named for Osamu Tezuka, who is a great mangaka artist. You might know him from Kimba the White Lion. Probably you know him by Astro Boy, or the fact that when he passed away, his daughter opened his locked desk at his office and found a bunch of furry porn that he had been doodling. That's not really that important. I just find that factoid incredibly comical to me. But I digress. So they were using, and still actually used to this day, this Tezuka Award to bring in up-and-coming, fresh talent and kind of keep them from anywhere else and give them a platform and give them a place. They would send in their one-shot chapters, and they would get picked and win an award and win some money and probably get a spot on the magazine. So that's a good way, if you're starting out in an already crowded market, to start getting eyeballs on you and getting good artists in your space. And like I said, they actually still do it to this day. I was Googling around for it. Again, hard to sometimes find information about this stuff in English. They had a list of the judges of some major mangaka that are either on or were on Shonen Jump's, author board. In this moment, R.I.P. Akira Toriyama, who had passed away a few weeks ago. It was a real bummer finding this page at the moment and going, oh, man, that's a shame. But we're going to keep going. We're going to get out of there. Admittedly, the bad news, though, is that Shonen Jump does have a golden age crest, I believe in the late 90s. They're putting out 6.8 million is their peak of sales, and then they start dipping down after that. And they're still really good. It's just never reached that height through a combination of just, I guess, the confluence of series, some of which we'll talk about later, And also just people are moving away from magazines. There's a reason in the beginning I made a gag about like young people don't want magazines because like they're not really around anymore. If they are, they're like a boutique item. They're not something that you're just finding on newsstands and getting. We read digitally, which is a thing I'll get into later. So some odds and ends of some more information about Jump and its things before we get into the series in it is that actually for a while we in America had our own American Shonen Jump. That was not literally just, hey, we took the Shonen Jump magazine and localized it because we didn't get every series back in the day. It's only fairly recently that they started localizing everything in it, and I'll be talking more about that later. But we had a specific set, and the first magazine, the thing that came out, I believe it came out monthly, I actually got this for a while, was Dragon Ball Z, Sandland, which also Akira Toriyama, One Piece, Yu Yu Hakusho, and Yu-Gi-Oh! So, smaller setup, we'll see the magazine in Japan's kind of bigger. But, like, what a cool little set for America to get. So, that one wasn't really, admittedly, that long-lived. It came out for, like, a decade, and then they kind of moved it digitally, and now we're kind of where we are at now, where we just kind of get the series as they come out in Japan. And this is kind of a little bonus topic, but I want you to see if there's something you can spot. Every issue of Shonen Jump has their logo, their little mascot guy on it. I want to see if you can find them. Some of these have more of them than others, so... if you've got a keen eye, I've pointed them out here. It's this little pirate guy. Since issue 1, this little guy has been on all of the issues. I know for a long time when I started reading, I'm like, oh, he must be One Piece related. One Piece is super popular in Shonen Jump. But it turns out he's been there decades before Oda was probably even alive. Or if he was a tiny, tiny, tiny baby. And I've learned that he was nameless for a long time, and only recently... in the past, like, decade, they named him, like, Journey or something. I don't know. Weird pick. I guess it's like, you're going to go on an adventure. And kind of similar to the naming of Jump. Really hard to nail down a reason of, like, why is it a pirate? And again, one of the things I was, found, probably anecdotal, was that it's like, oh, you found treasure. This is pirate's treasure. This manga is so good. It's like opening a treasure chest. It's amazing. So I thought that was kind of cute. And one kind of last little thing while we're getting our little odds and ends anecdotal stories. This one is almost assuredly more anecdotal, but it comes from a really good friend of mine, a manga historian, Maxi B. Was that supposedly they used to survey the people reading Jump to find out, like, age and gender and stuff like that. And it turned out, like, maybe not quite 50%, but closer to 50% than you'd think of women were reading Shonen Jump. And anecdotally, supposedly, they stopped doing the surveys because the male artists were so embarrassed that girls were reading their manga. They're like, I don't want to know about that. They're a very bashful bunch, these male authors in Shonen Jump. So, admittedly, that can sometimes lead to things being a little bit of a boys' club in Jump. I think they've gotten infinitely better about that, but every so often you get like a whiff of the old guard and you're like, no, not here, not now. So now that we've kind of gotten some history and some informational basis, some fun facts, let's get into why is it important. Now, I'm going to rattle off a list of series that have all come from Shonen Jump, all from the same magazine. They even have different magazines. Shueisha is publishing and still publishes different manga magazines. This is one magazine. And when I say a name, I want you to raise your hand or think in your brain, I've read that one, and I want you to do that while I go into this. So get ready for this. So, Bleach, Demon Slayer, Kinnikuman, Rurouni Kenshin, Slam Dunk, Yu Yu Hakusho, Chainsaw Man, Naruto, Haikyuu, Fist of the North Star, JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, Yu-Gi-Oh!, Dragon Ball, and One Piece, all coming from the same magazine over decades of time. Now, even if you haven't read or watched all of those, you have probably at the very least heard of them. These are long-running series that have stuck around. A lot of them are still getting things coming out today, even if they came out ages ago. These are like columns of the manga and anime industry, all coming from one book. No one else can really claim that space. So here, let me try to show that a little bit more with some different numbers. Here is a list of all the manga that have sold from, I believe it is 50 million to 99 million. Here are the ones that come from Jump. That's almost half of them, all from the same magazine. Now, this isn't even the top reaching ones. Let's do that next. These are over 1 million sales, I believe, if I've got my numbers right. Here are the ones that are all from Jump, including the top spot, which is One Piece. Even more than, and I think the only other ones near the top are these in like insane long-running Japan very specific ones, which is like Golgo 13, which we never really got over here, and Case Closed that we did, but it never really took off like it did in Japan. So it's like, those are two insanely long ones. A lot of the other ones in these top spots are like, I think like Doraemon is up here, which is practically like Japanese Mickey Mouse, but like Shonen Jump is cornering the market on this. 9 out of the 20 listed here, again, all from Shonen Jump. I think no other singular publication is claiming that many spots on this, and I think there's a good reason for that. So, now that I think I've hopefully stated to you why Shonen Jump is important, especially if you are an anime or manga fan, or if you are watching me live doing this as a panel at an anime convention, I feel like now if you didn't fully understand how big Shonen Jump is, now you know. Now I want to get into what I've been really wanting to talk about this whole time, which is the current state of the magazine. Now, I know we're not in a golden age anymore. Who knows if we'll ever reach that. Obviously, sales numbers never go that big because people aren't buying magazines. We're reading digital, baby. But I would say the lineup for it is still really strong, and there's a lot of fun stuff in there. So here are the series that are currently in Shonen Jump. Let me get my math right on that. It's 21, 22, and technically Hunter x Hunter, but that's on big hiatus, but I didn't want to forget about it. So these are all series being printed on paper in a magazine in Japan and shipped to people's house or sold on newsstands. So kind of think about that. And what's interesting about Shonen Jump is the churn of old series leaving and new series coming in, and seeing the trends that pass through in both a bigger context of the manga anime industry, but also within Jump itself. For a long time, we had teens fighting supernatural, like ghosts and demons and stuff like that, and like there's some really good stuff in there. I'm also getting really sick of it, which is why it's really neat that we're now getting this like new trend of like super spies and hitmen, and it's just neat to be able to watch. It's like a little petri dish or like an ant farm to watch in real time interest trains and new trends come up and all of that. But speaking of trends, there's something not here. There's a genre and a type of manga that is doing gangbusters everywhere else that is just not present here. And that is isekai. Isekai and by general light novel adaptions are not in Jump. It seems like this is a specific walled garden and they are not chasing this trend. They'll chase their own trends. There's constantly schlock coming out that's trying to do whatever the current, trend is and not quite getting it. But by and large, it's all original works. They're not adapting light novels. They're not doing isekai. And in my opinion, good riddance. I particularly don't like isekai. That's me. That's one of the reasons I like Jump in my little walled garden. But that is neither here nor there. Another thing that is on here that I alluded to earlier is that sports manga are cursed. I like them a lot. The people I talk to like them a lot. Japanese teens do not like them. And I'm going to take this moment to talk up one of my favorite ones that got canceled, I believe, at the end of last year, early this year, called Martial Master Asumi, about a dude getting into mixed martial arts. And there was also, like, a female co-lead who was the coolest. And there's, like, a moment where she does a giant freaking German suplex, and it's the coolest thing ever! And the Japanese teens were not about it. That is admittedly a bad thing I will say about Shonen Jump, is that you, as an American English speaker, have almost zero power, and if you do, you have like 0.000000001% effect on any of it. Because, gosh darn it, did I love that manga, and everybody in my community liked that manga, and Japanese teens did not. And a way that we can see this, a joy, though, admittedly, of being in on Jump and watching it mutate, is seeing the lineup and reading the tea leaves. So this is literally the issue that is coming out. I guess it is physically out in Japan already, but at the time of recording, this is the chapters that are about to drop for us in America. And you can kind of read the tea leaves and go, things are at the top on the left side are doing pretty good. They're surviving. Things on the right side, especially towards the bottom, not doing so hot. Not popular. Popular stuff, front of magazine. Unpopular stuff, back of magazine. Most unpopular, back of the bus. Not doing well on Death Watch when cutting time is around. So we've actually picked a very interesting time to record because literally in a week or two, It looks like some are going to get canceled. So here's our big lineup of everything. These 3 look like, again, reading the tea leaves and the other information and news we're getting, these 3 look like they're going to go. 2 on Ice, Mama Yu Yu, and Shadow Eliminators. 2 on Ice. There you go. Sports manga. Not doing so hot, even though it was pretty good. So those are going on their way out, which means a new manga will take their place. We actually also recently had some cancellations that gave us some new manga. These 2 here, Dear Anemone and Super Psychic Policeman Shoujo. Also not great, admittedly. But it's exciting to see these things come through and either find their feet or laugh and point in failure when they're just god-awful. So I want to try to impress across to you how much churn happens in Jump. So in the last year, these are all the manga that were specifically axed or canceled. So I want to get across to you how quickly things can churn in and out recently. We have Tokyo Demon Bride Story, Linka and Luna, the Ichinosius Family's Deadly Sins, Cypher Academy, Ichigoki's Under Control, Fabricant 100, we're going to talk about that one later, Tenmaku Cinema, Do Retry, Martial Master Asumi, My Beloved, Icehead Gill. That's 10. That is a graveyard's worth of manga that lived and died within a year's span. And even if most of them were garbage, and the ones that died that I like broke my heart, I think it's an amazing, incredible petri dish. And like I said, we've got 3 more coming to die soon. That's 13 within a year's time of all just manga that came and went, and new stuff is constantly sprouting up, and some of it will take, and some of it won't. And there's actually a reason recently that we've been starting to get it. Admittedly, this is another anecdotal story, is that supposedly Viz, the main American publisher, along with Shueisha, which is the Japanese publisher, originally when they were coming out, passed on localizing My Hero Academia and Demon Slayer manga. And obviously they were kicking themselves because those things, especially once the anime came up, blew the F up. And then Shonen Jump and Viz in America were behind on it. You know, pirates got to eat their lunch essentially, and not the fun One Piece kind. So for that reason, we get everything now coming through Jump, which we didn't before. That was something I think that made manga and anime special in the early days, is that we didn't get everything because you'd only want to localize the good stuff because you only had so much bandwidth to localize things. And now it's like they're going to bet on everything so they don't miss the opportunity that one of them blows up. They're prepped and ready, they already have it, but that also means there's a lot of churn, which personally I find interesting, which is why I'm doing this panel, but that's up to you. Speaking of which, how do you even read this stuff? So, the 2 major platforms you're going to be looking for is Manga Plus and Shonen Jump, the literal Shonen Jump app. A lot of people I know use Manga Plus. I'm sure it's great. I believe it has a similar subscription model. I use Shonen Jump app because it's literally the app. It gives me everything that is currently coming out in the magazine, everything that had come in the magazine when they started localizing everything, and a constantly expanding backlog of past titles, which there's some freaking good stuff in there, including all of Dragon Ball. Now, Shonen Jump, the subscription for it that I can speak to is, at this time of recording, $3 a month. It is my favorite subscription. And I get all the current Jump, a lot of the old Jump, more of the old Jump over time, and I also get titles from Shonen Jump Plus, which is Shonen Jump's online-only publishing that has a bunch of other cool things. You probably have heard of Spy Family. That's from Shonen Jump Plus. You might have heard of Kaiju Number 8. That's from Shonen Jump Plus. Chainsaw Man now lives on Shonen Jump Plus. A lot of cool stuff gets to show up there and thus shows up in the app, included in your $3. It is a great deal. You have so much freaking manga to read for so cheap. And think about how much money you're saving. Imagine if you were wanting to read all of One Piece physically, and you had to buy all those tankobons. So for my little research, it's like around $10 for tankobon. Right now, there's over 100 copies. So what is that? That is over $1,000 to try to read all of One Piece. You'd have to, where would you have to probably buy a bookshelf to store all these? But with the Shonen Jump app, you just get your tablet or your phone or your laptop, anything that can access the website or the app, $3 a month. I've been making my way through One Piece since last year, and I've probably spent less money. I could probably finish reading One Piece and catch up before I would have to spend as much money as I would spend reading all of, before, Alabasta or something. or when they get to the Grand Line, I guess. And I get to read all of One Piece and all the new stuff, and I get to read Hunter x Hunter, and I get to read Jujutsu Kaisen, and I get to read all this fun stuff. $3 a month, good deal. And on top of that, the first 3 chapters of a manga are free, and the latest 3 chapters are free. So like I said, there's a lot of churn. There's new series coming on. So even if you don't want to spend the money on it, if you catch a series in the beginning, you could read for free the entire run. It's nice and easy breezy. It's always the first 3 and the last 3, the 3 latest. Nice and easy if you don't want to spend $1 on it. I don't blame you. Times are tough, but like I said, of all the subscription services I pay for and have ever paid for, this is the one where I'm actively like, I'm overjoyed at the price of the amount of content I get. So now that we know where we can read it and why we should read it, we should know what to check out. So let's get into that. What's this? What's going on? This is supposed...
Hi there. I'm Isekai Sensei-sama, and I'm here to derail this a little bit because there's something that Kermit has failed to mention so far, which is just how difficult it is to read manga online. The thing is, there's lots of different places to read manga online, but there's only one place that's actually any good, and that's from Viz, who publishes Shonen Jump. Almost every other place that you can read manga online uses a ridiculous system of what we might call microtransactions, where you have to buy packs of points or keys or tickets or, God forbid, ink to actually unlock chapters to read them. And a lot of those places, the chapters aren't too expensive. It's not that big of a deal. But you can't just buy a single chapter with your money. You have to buy a pack of points or tickets or ink and then spend some amount of those from that pack to unlock a chapter. And so you always end up with some left over. It's like V-Bucks or something like that. And it's utterly insane. There's only 1 or 2 places online that do this in a sane way. And one of those is from Viz. You pay Viz a subscription fee per month and you get everything they have. And that's it. You can read as much as you want. You get all the new stuff. You get all the old stuff. None of this futzing around with ink or keys or whatever. Now, the thing is, at the end of the day, it sort of depends on what series you want to read because most places don't have the same series. But the thing is, Viz has all the best series anyway. Right, Kermit? See ya. Actually, K-Manga is pretty good. They have a lot of isekai on there. You should probably check...
Okay, enough of this. Okay, we gotta keep moving. So, like I said, I'm going to show you what you should be checking out in Jump. Now, I'm not going to tell you what you already know. Read One Piece. Duh! Read Jujutsu Kaisen. Duh! Read My Hero Academia is still publishing. Black Clover was admittedly in Jump and is now somewhere else, but I think it's still coming out on the app, I hope. I don't keep up with Black Clover. Gomi Masari. So I'm telling you about the cool stuff that you and your friends probably don't know about. I think all but one of these don't have an anime, even if some of them really need them. Some of these are still in the fledgling stage. One of them is already dead. But that's what I want to bring you. I'm going to bring you the deep cuts that are worth your time. So first off is Akane Banashi, started back in 2022, early 22. This is about Rakugo, and if you don't know what Rakugo is a storytelling theater style specific to Japan. It's like a one-person show where somebody kind of inhabits all the characters. They don't really get props, they don't get costume changes, and there's specific stories you tell. It's all very structured. It's always very structured. So our story is following our main character, Akane, whose father wanted to be a Rakugo, and he was taking the exam with some other students to let him move on to the next level, and something went down and nobody got to get to the next level. Everybody got you've all failed, and he stopped doing Rakugo forever. He's well, that's the break, so I can't get any higher, I'm done. Again, probably handle a little bit more. It's been a long time since I was in the early chapters. So his daughter then, when she grows up, wants to become a Rakugo, and this is her journey. So Akane Banashi is... I used to call it like a sports manga because it has that thing of like I'm working at a particular thing, and usually it was sports. In this case, though, it is theater. So I've kind of shifted more to this is a craft manga. This is watching a particular person and other people's work and improve upon their craft and show the way that they do it special over time. And Akane is really good for that. It is really satisfying to watch her learn lessons and meet mentors and figure out new things as she's telling these stories. And the art's cute and the characters are cute, and the way that like all of them inhabit these characters for these stories is consistently compelling. I really want an Akane Banashi anime. I think having actual actors performing these things would elevate the source material even more. But highly, highly, highly recommend Akane Banashi. The cast is great. I think let me pick some. There's like a female who's like a up and coming like anime voice actor who's like super popular, but like she wants to get into Rakugo, and that brings a particular energy. There's like a retired salesman who's like way older than the others, but like he's got a fun energy I like following as like a 30 something. So it's Akane Banashi. Check it out. It's fantastic. It literally just put out its 100th chapter recently at time of recording. What do you got to lose? Now my next one is a sports manga, I will warn you. And it's about golf. I know. I get it. This is Green Green Greens, recently started just at the end of 2023. It's barely got like 20 chapters out, but there's just something about it that just make golf seem cool. That makes it interesting. This is even more than Akane Banashi. I know I talked about that as being like a sports manga. Green Green Greens is a craft manga, and the craft is golf. And, I mean, I work on stuff. I do theater stuff. That's why I'm here now to an extent. And to see somebody put effort in to these things and work on it and delve into the understanding of how we get into things and what we work on to spend our time on and get better at and being somebody who is just like, oh, I never want to commit to anything because, like, if I'm not instantly good at it, I'm not going to do it. And it's just every week is consistently making interesting choices about what it's doing, how it's portraying the idea of getting into literally any hobby and the interpersonal connections between the characters. And, like, that's a good sports manga. I say that sports manga are cursed, as I said before. Green Green Greens, not doing too well. If you were eagle-eyed before, I'm showing you again now. Kind of at the bottom of the list. Kind of marked for death. It's come out recently enough that it still gets a little bit more time to live its life. Japanese teens. Not about sports, especially golf. If mixed martial arts aren't going to get them, golf isn't. But, like, somebody who would normally go, golf, gross, old white people money, whatever, Green Green Greens, I would highly recommend to check out. If you want to be somebody who's on the cusp of something that probably might die. Now, speaking of being on the cusps, this one is like an A+ winner. This is betting money on that this one's going to be big because it is already showing big stuff in Japan, and that is Kagurabachi. Kagurabachi started toward the end of 2023. I'll call them like clutch mates. I don't know what to call them, like eggs, fellow siblings. They tend to cut manga at the same time and then introduce a batch at the same time. We talked about earlier, Two on Ice and Mama Yu debuted around the time that Kagurabachi did. Those two are dying. Kagurabachi doing gangbusters. Sold, I think its first volume went on sale recently and like sold out. Like did super well. It's rocketed up its position on the list. Happy to see it survive. Kagurabachi mixes our old trends and our new trends. It is a magical swordsman hitman story about our main character. I think his name is Chihiro. His father worked on these magic swords that were used in some big war. Father dies mysteriously. Boy is now a killer, trying to get the swords back to keep them out of the bad hands of whatever gangs are going on, because there's a lot of magical gangs around. Chihiro is a lovely little edge boy. I normally hate edgelords, but there's just something really charming about him. I love this. This is a line that Kagurabachi got super memed on in the first chapter in America. This may or may not have had an impact on in Japan. I don't know. It's better than just a meme manga, admittedly. But the idea that he says, I wake up every day to look at it to get filled with fresh hatred, which is the most edgy thing ever. Oh my gosh. But it's not like an edgy, edgelordy series. There's also kind of like silly, funny stuff. It gives me big early 2000s energy. both in like an anime sense, like I get big Toonami energy from it for some reason, but also just a lot of things at that time. It's got like a Tarantino energy. It's got Matrix energy. It makes a lot of interesting choices in how it chooses to tell its story. Like, it's not the standard shonen stuff. Like, it feels like the next generation of things, and that's really exciting. I believe I literally just learned earlier today that the author is like only 23. So it's really neat seeing the new generation come in and how that influences what they're writing. And as an American, it's fun to see the Western influences coming in more. So highly, highly, highly recommend Kagurabachi. Still leaving the station, but doing real strong. This is expect this one day to be an incredible anime years from now. So if you want to be on the ground floor, check out Kagurabachi. Now, my next one, we're going to stay kind of in the Hitman realm. And this one's not as big, but I think this is a fun read. I am consistently entertained by this one. This is Kill Blue. Started mid-2023, so it's got some good legs on it. It has survived the normal culling period, so you can bet on it. This is a story of a master hitman assassin who was sent on a job. I believe a bee stings him, some sort of science bee, and he is changed back into the body of a teenager. So he retains all of his memories and abilities. He is now in a teenage body. To hopefully get back to what his actual, adult self is, he goes to school to get close to the daughter of the, I think it's pharmaceutical company lead, who made that drug that might be able to get him back. I don't think we've paid attention to that plotline for ages. That's not so important. The thing is that when he goes back to school, it turns out he really loves school. And he forms this sort of close but like fake relationship with this girl who everybody else is trying to court. So he's kind of like her beard in an extent, like a defense. And with me saying that, you might think, an adult man in a child's body kind of sort of dating a teenage girl? Isn't that kind of gross? And this is what I want to talk about with specifically talking about Kill Blue. Is Kill Blue, and I don't know how it does it, and it just feels really good, is that every time Kill Blue goes up to the line about like, ooh, you've presented a thing that like isn't directly icky, but you've presented the thing that something icky might happen. And then it just goes, ugh, why would I do the icky thing? That's icky. We're not going to do that. And it keeps doing that in a way that it feels like oddly like, do they know we're paying attention? And it's just, there's something very refreshing about that the way they handle these relationships in these situations that you think might be gross, and then they just deal with them well. And it's fun to see him deal with situations. There's constantly these characters named unicorns who are these like one-of-a-kind people. Sometimes they're hitmen, sometimes they're just regular people coming in, constantly trying to either find him out for who he is, or attempt to date the daughter of that pharmaceutical company magnate. There's this freaking weirdo who just sucks on like a baby binky, and then he just joins the cast and he's just a freaking weirdo. And just, you kind of just keep rolling from there. But I don't know, Kill Blue, fun action, fun comedy, fun, just a good time. Check out Kill Blue if you want like a nice, cozier, fun read. And we're going to continue to keep our Hitman trend and talk about Sakamoto Days. Sakamoto Days is dying for an anime. Hopefully one day, if you were watching this video, it has one finally, and I'm vindicated. Sakamoto Days is about an assassin. Actually, I should also say, this series has been coming out for a while. This came out back in 2020. This is one of the longer-running series I'm talking about today. This is about again, master hitman assassin, as like a teen young adult, falls in love, gets married, comes out of the game. He's left the game. He now runs a convenience store with his wife and family. Good family man is Sakamoto. And then something happens and he's pulled back in. People start attacking his shop and trying to kill him, and it kind of goes from there. It reminds me a lot of early Dragon Ball with that feeling of like, here's the basis, it's strong, and then we just start meeting more characters and they kind of join the cast. And then it really finds its feet about what it's doing and goes from there. But it's fun the whole time. Now, the thing that puts Sakamoto Days really ahead is its zany characters and its action. So first, the characters. Here's a taster plate. Sakamoto's himself and his little retinue he builds up is interesting. I want to point out there's just like an assassin duo you see a lot in the, having little side scene backgrounds where one of them is it's this blonde man in a suit who just wields a ball-peen hammer. Other people have like guns and swords and all this crazy stuff. This man has gotten something from the hardware store, and he's like one of the top dudes in the freaking killer society. It's mad. And he works with this lady up here who just wears a black dress and uses a bandsaw. And I just think that's rad. These are two people who just went to the hardware store and they're the top of their game, and I love it. And also just needed to shout out X, this man who's got an incredibly detailed deer head, because I'm a sucker for it. But the thing that really put Sakamoto Days over the edge and why I'm like dying for it to get a good anime is its action. It has some of the most fun, visually imaginative action you're going to find in a manga today, Jump or otherwise. Just the way, the kinetic nature of all these things coming around and the weird characters that you can put together to make these fights happen. Like, things are constantly interesting and popping off in crazy ways that you'd never expect. Like, imagine if you've seen the action scenes in Jujutsu Kaisen's anime, because I can tell you they're not that interesting in the manga comparatively, like visually. Sakamoto Days is doing that in the manga. So imagine when it gets an anime with a budget, how like all this action is going to be. Like, big recommend for Sakamoto Days. This is one of the ones I've been reading the longest, and it's got a soft spot with me, and I just want it to see it get its day. Now, let's completely change gears. We've done enough Hitmen and bodyguards and all that stuff, but we are going to keep the magical thing from earlier. I'm telling you about Witch Watch. Witch Watch has actually been around for pretty long. It started back in early 2021. It's very much a jack of all trades. It's got there's a romance basis, there's some action, there's comedy, there's slice of life. I know I said action, but like specific like battle manga stuff. It's got everything. The main idea, and I'm a little behind on it, so maybe my name memory isn't the greatest right now, but we follow our main character who is an ogre, a Japanese ogre or oni, but he looks like a human. He's like, that's his family bloodline. And he has to watch after his childhood friend who went off to become a witch and is now this like really important witch, so he needs to defend her. And kind of like watch over her and keep her safe. And that's kind of the main basis of it and where the romance comes from and the battles come from. But as time passes on, their household and just general friend group expands with more like mythological and folk creatures. So later they get like a Tengu boy and a werewolf and a vampire joins the house. And there's like a couple extra witches that show up. And I think, a Jekyll and Hyde character shows up and a Frankenstein girl. And it's just a fun cast. If you've been watching or reading Spy Family, it reminds me in that where it's just like, this episode or chapter, we're doing this genre of manga, and we're going to do it really good, and it's a good time. We're doing a romance this time. We're doing a battler this time. We're telling a long, specific story. We're having a gag manga story. Here's one where, because shenanigans happen a lot, the main witch, whose name I really should have looked up before I started this, turns herself into paper, and now her protector needs to go and find her. She's going through the town. Or there's the time where her magic goes wrong, and she turns everybody into Minecraft creatures. And they have to go to the movies and have a little adventure. And it's like, these aren't things I'm expecting to find in my manga. And it's a really fun, endearing series. I think of all the ones that I'm recommending today, Witch Watch is the coziest and most compelling. It's a fun thing to see in Jump, because stuff like this isn't always in it. Sometimes things have too much boy energy. Witch Watch is a nice change of pace from things, and I really like it. So if you like that sort of more slice of life romance with a little, if you just want to kind of put your fingers in a bunch of different genre pots, check out Witch Watch. So we're nearing the end on this one. This one I've been going through recently. I'm almost caught up on it, and I am loving it, and I am sad more people are not talking about Undead Unluck. This one started back in 2020. It's got just about 200 chapters at time of recording. I think in a few weeks it will hit chapter 200. Undead Unluck is one of the most shonen manga of all time that I have ever read. It is the shonenest, manga-ist thing that I have seen. And is about a bunch of people with crazy powers. They're called negators. They all have powers. This is where we get undead who cannot die, and unluck who if somebody makes physical contact with her, a bout of unluck comes to that person in various forms. And there's a bunch of other ones, and they all have different powers, and they are trying to fight and kill God. Yeah. But also just, it's constantly gonzo crazy. If you like the long-term world building that One Piece does, where something gets planted earlier and then gets paid off infinitely later in a way that you weren't expecting, Undead Unluck is great for that. Do you like weird puzzle fights like JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, where people have strange powers and a lot of it's just sort of riding along the hey, this is cool? Undead Unluck. Great for that. Cool cast. This is the one series I'm talking about that does have an anime. I have not seen it yet. I wanted to read it all first, or at least catch up on it. So, I've heard it's solid. I don't know if that's truly the way to check it out. It's got a really good cast. I want to talk up especially the beginning. I will give you is kind of rough. There's some stuff that's a little icky. I promise you, if you get through it, it goes away completely and redeems itself. Undead Unluck probably has some of the best female characters in Shonen Jump at the moment. And that's not just like, oh, it's a really low bar to cover. Like, genuinely here, like, these are some of my favorites. In a way that feels very just like, they are people and they are women, and not like, ooh, it's the eye candy. And that's just really a nice change of pace to have that. Like, there are a bunch of different people from across the globe, and they all have cool powers. And it's just a rad anime shonen-y, manga, battle-y, puzzle-y adventure. So if that's like what you need, if you're like, I caught up on One Piece, I've watched all the JoJo's, I need more of whatever just like manga BS in a good way, read Undead Unluck. I promise you, you'll appreciate it. It is constantly just pulling new crazy ideas, and it's like, I'm gonna do this, and it just has a fun time with all of it. Now, finally, I'm gonna suggest to you a manga that did die. We talked about it in quick passing earlier. Is Fabricant 100. This was one of my babies. I got to see this one from when it started with its first chapter back in 2022 to when it was finally canceled in 2023. It is complete, 36 chapters. It has an ending. The ending is really great. This is an action adventure with horror elements. The idea being that there are these creatures this mad doctor created called Fabricants. He's attempting to recreate humanity, like with these Frankensteins, and he keeps making them. He starts with the first one, and he keeps making them, but he keeps getting them wrong, so he has to make another one, and they keep getting stronger and more powerful, and finally he makes the 100th one, and dies. And they all go out into the world going, we don't know how to be the ideal human, and they misunderstand this concept and go, well, we just need all the best human parts, and they go around just killing and taking the best parts from humanity and people. And where we get Fabricant 100 in this situation is that our main character, him and his family have some weird genetic thing where it's like they age more slowly or something. They don't get into it super specifically. It's not really important, but it's basically the idea that like all of their like flesh and organs and pieces are like the highest quality to these Fabricants. So a bunch of them all descend on his household and start killing them all for their parts. And our little protagonist is like, hey, Fabricant 100, the strongest one, or whoever, I think he just says it to everybody. If you kill all these guys and keep me safe, when I turn like 16 or 18 and my body is the most perfect shape it's going to be in, when I hit my physical apex, you can do whatever you want me till then, but until that point, keep me alive. And that's the deal we make. I am giving you my body in the future on collateral. And thus we get Fabricant 100, our insane Dami Mommy in her little sundress. And it's just them going across the countryside, running into these Fabricants, and it's small, it says nice things about humanity, there's interesting moments and it does something that so many other things that cover, like, things that aren't human but pretend to be, where it actually captures of, like, no, these things are literally built different. They do not act the same as humanity. They do not want the same things. Genuinely, you cannot trust them. And this constant, like, at odds tete-a-tete between our main character and Fabricant 100 of the, like, power dynamic is what makes it interesting. But also then that big question of, like, what is an ideal human? And these Fabricants trying to figure that out. So, is it the strongest manga ever? No. But I think it's probably going to get lost to the sands of time, and I think it deserves to be remembered. Not everything that flops in Shonen Jump is worth checking out from just a purely quality standpoint, and I think this is one of them. And with that, we are at the end. I hope you've been informed. I hope you understand why Shonen Jump is important. I hope you go and read Shonen Jump. I am not sponsored by them, but, like, give them $3 a month and read all this cool manga, and then come talk to me about it. Come talk to us about it. You can find, if you scan your screen, even though you probably already know that because you're on our YouTube channel, you can find our website where we have our podcast, our mainline podcast, That Time I Got Reincarnated, in the same role as an anime podcaster, where we kind of delve into, like, bigger anime topics. We also have my co-hosts Isekai Sensei Sama and Bento Baggins have Heroin Addiction, where they talk about otome isekai. So if that's your particular cup of tea, go check that out. That's a good time. Isekai Sensei Sama and I have a podcast called Shonen Jumping the Gun, which I talked about earlier, where we read the first chapter of a manga and make wide-reaching predictions and quality judgments on it. So that's a really good way to kind of keep, if you can't always keep up with Jump stuff, just listen to the podcast and you'll know what's come out that you're like, oh man, I should check that out. And we also have our, at least new series at time of recording, Baka Banashi, Idiot Talk, for just like the dumb, stupid stuff we want to chat about that it does not fit anywhere else. So come check that out. Hopefully we'll have more of these panels in the future, and thank you for watching, and have a good day.